The phone rang just after midnight. Daniel Carter almost ignored it. After all, who calls at that hour? But something in the trembling voice on the other end made his chest tighten. "Mr. Carter, it's Aaliyah. I think your wife is in trouble." Silence pressed against the line, heavy and unreal. Daniel hadn't heard Monica's name spoken to him in years. Estranged, vanished, lost in the wreckage of old battles. But the girl's following words cut through like glass. "She's in your house. Tied up, I saw it." A man locked her inside. Daniel's hand trembled as he clutched the phone. He could hear Aaliyah's shallow breaths, the distant creak of a floorboard behind her, and the faint sound of sirens far away. His mind rebelled. Monica? Here? After all this time? The thought churned in his gut, equal parts dread and desperate hope. If the girl was right, someone had broken into his life in more ways than one. And Daniel Carter, the billionaire CEO, a man of control and power, suddenly felt powerless. But this midnight call was only the beginning. A secret was about to surface, one that would rip open the walls of his home, his past, and an entire nation. Daniel Carter sat in his office, staring at the city skyline as the girl's words echoed in his mind. "She's in your house, tied up." For years, Daniel had built walls so high that nothing, no lawsuit, no protest, not even Monica herself, could break through. He was a billionaire, a self-made CEO of Carter Dynamics, known for his ruthless efficiency. In public, he was respected. In private, he was alone. Monica had left 3 years ago after their marriage collapsed amid legal battles. She had accused Daniel of disregarding corruption tied to his own board members. He accused her of betrayal, and then she disappeared. No goodbye, no trace, just silence. Now, a stranger's voice, a little black girl's voice, claimed she was trapped in his home. Aaliyah Johnson was 6 years old, but already knew more about fear than most adults. She lived 2 blocks from Daniel's gated estate in a neighborhood most of his colleagues never drove through. Broken streetlights, peeling paint, sirens at night, this was her normal. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Her father? Gone before she was born. Aaliyah found small refuges in borrowed books and the old scratched phone her uncle had given her. She was quiet and observant, the kind of child who noticed things that adults missed. That night, she had seen it. The shadow of a man dragging Monica Carter through the back gate. She had seen Monica's terrified eyes. She had seen the ropes. And she had run, heart pounding, to the payphone at the corner. She didn't know why she called Daniel Carter directly. It could be instinct. Perhaps it was destiny. Daniel left the office without telling anyone. As his black sedan cut through empty streets, his mind reeled. He wanted to believe it was a hoax, a cruel prank. Yet the urgency in that girl's voice, it felt too raw to be fabricated. He parked outside his mansion. The house stood still, too still. No lights, no guards, just silence. And then he noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. The side gate, usually locked, was ajar. Hours earlier, across the city, Monica Carter had been fighting for her life. She had lived in the shadows since leaving Daniel, piecing together fragments of evidence about a program called Vigil. She had discovered its true nature, not just surveillance, but profiling. Children from low income, predominantly minority neighborhoods, were being tagged, monitored, and funneled into a system that predicted who would fail before they ever had a chance to succeed. It was data-driven discrimination, polished with the veneer of technology. And Monica had been determined to expose it. But someone had found her first. Back in Daniel's house, footsteps creaked against the hardwood as he stepped inside. His breath was shallow, his body tense. "Monica?" he whispered. Nothing. The living room smelled faintly of leather and spilled whiskey. A broken glass lay near the fireplace. And then from down the hall, a muffled cry. He froze. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back. But he forced his legs to move. When he opened the door, his worst fears materialized. Monica, his estranged wife, was bound to a chair, gagged, her eyes blazing with both fear and fury. And behind her, a shadow shifted. Aaliyah, meanwhile, had not gone home. Something told her it wasn't over. She lingered near the street corner, watching the glow of Daniel's house through the trees. She hugged her arms tight against the cold night air. That's when she saw the black SUV roll slowly past, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. The car stopped for a moment, the driver staring at her. She felt her throat tighten, and then, without warning, the SUV pulled into the Carter estate. Daniel barely had time to react before a man lunged from the shadows, slamming him into the wall. The intruder's grip was iron, his face hidden beneath a black mask. "You shouldn't have come back, Carter," the man hissed. The two struggled, fists crashing into walls, furniture splintering. Monica fought against her restraints, her muffled cries rising like a siren. Daniel managed to break free, delivering a desperate blow that sent the masked man reeling. But the intruder recovered quickly, grabbing a knife from his belt. Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't a burglary. This was an execution. Aaliyah crouched low in the bushes outside, watching with wide, terrified eyes as shadows moved inside the house. She didn't understand everything, but she knew one thing: Monica Carter's life hung by a thread. And now, so did Daniel's. For a moment, the girl thought about running home, about crawling under the covers and pretending she had seen nothing. But something inside her, a spark she didn't even know she had, kept her rooted. She whispered to herself, "Don't let them win." And with that, Aaliyah picked up a rock and inched closer to the house. Daniel Carter staggered back from the masked intruder's blade, his chest heaving, blood rushing in his ears. He grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and swung. The man crumpled, dazed but not unconscious. Daniel rushed to Monica's side, fumbling at the knots. Her eyes, furious, desperate, locked on his. When he finally pulled the gag free, she spat the words between ragged breaths. "They know, Daniel. They know I have the files." Before he could ask, the sound of tires screeched outside. Headlights washed over the windows. More men were coming. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He yanked Monica free, pulling her toward the back door. But Monica staggered, weak from hours of captivity. Outside, Aaliyah pressed herself flat against the wall, clutching the rock she'd picked up. Her tiny hands shook, but her eyes were wide with determination. She saw Daniel half-carrying Monica, both shadows moving against the flood of headlights. The masked man inside groaned, lifting himself from the floor. The glint of his knife returned. Aaliyah's throat went dry. If she didn't act now, they'd all be dead. She hurled the rock at the nearest car. The windshield cracked like thunder. Alarms blared. The intruders cursed. For one precious moment, chaos gave them cover. They escaped into the night, Daniel's arm around Monica, Aaliyah following close behind. In the alley, Monica gasped for air, her wrists raw from the ropes. "They're watching everything, Daniel. Phones, cameras, bank accounts. Vigil is everywhere. I hid the evidence. But if they find it before we do, we're finished." Daniel shook his head, still trying to process. "Evidence? What evidence?" Monica met his eyes, the fire of conviction unbroken. "I've been tracking them for years. Government officials, corporations, algorithms marking children like Aaliyah before they even reach middle school. They decide who gets opportunities and who gets cages." Daniel's gaze shifted to Aaliyah, who clutched her arms against the cold. She wasn't just a witness. She was a victim of the system Monica had uncovered. They moved quickly, hiding in the shadows and slipping past security cameras. Finally, they reached an abandoned summer house Monica had once owned under her maiden name. Dust and cobwebs clung to every corner, but it offered safety, at least for the night. Inside, Monica pulled up the loose floorboard beneath an old piano. She reached down, fingers trembling, and pulled out a small USB drive sealed in plastic. "This," she whispered, holding it like a relic, "is everything. Predictive policing, secret contracts, proof of children targeted by race, income, or even zip code. They call it Project Black Seed." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You mean they've been deciding futures before kids even had a chance?" "Yes," Monica said. Her eyes flicked to Aaliyah, who curled on the couch, trying to stay awake. "Children like her." Later that night, Daniel and Monica argued in hushed voices. The storm outside pounded the windows, masking their fear. Daniel, why didn't you come to me sooner? Monica, because you were part of the machine, Daniel. You signed the contracts. You let them in, Daniel. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Monica slammed the drive onto the table. Whether you knew or not, we're both targets now. They will kill us to keep this buried? Aaliyah stirred, her small voice cutting through the tension. Then show everybody. Please put it on the news. On the internet? The adults stared at her. A child had spoken the truth. Neither dared say aloud. By morning, Daniel had made calls to trusted contacts. Or so he thought. But trust was dangerous now. One wrong word could expose them. At a diner on the edge of town, Daniel met his old lawyer, Jacob Ortiz. Jacob was cautious, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. If you really have what you say, Jacob whispered. It's not just the police you're up against. Senators, tech giants, defense contractors, they all have stakes in this. Daniel slid the USB across the table. I need it in safe hands, but Jacob didn't move to take it. His hand trembled. His voice was almost a whisper. You don't understand. I'm already being watched. As Daniel returned to the summer house, rain pouring down, he noticed the front door was cracked open. Inside, silence. Monica? He called, panic tightening his throat. No answer. Then, a scream. He bolted to the back room, heart slamming. Monica was gone. The window shattered. Curtains blowing in the storm, and on the floor, Aaliyah, shaking, clutching the broken key fob of a black SUV. Through sobs, Aaliyah explained. Men in masks had stormed in. They dragged Monica out. She had tried to stop them, biting, kicking, even throwing a chair. One of them shoved her, and she fell. But she'd grabbed the fob as they escaped. Daniel held the small piece of plastic as if it were solid gold. This can trace them. Aaliyah's eyes brimmed with tears. They said she wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Daniel pulled her close, his own throat burning. He looked out into the storm, knowing the clock was ticking. That night, Daniel and Aaliyah sat in front of a laptop, the USB drive plugged in. Files opened, names, contracts, surveillance footage, children's profiles, predictive scores, thousands of them. Aaliyah gasped when she saw her own name. Her photo, notes about her absent father, her mother's long shifts, and her school attendance. A line that read, high risk of juvenile detention, age 14. Daniel's blood turned to ice. The system had already decided her fate. He whispered, No, not while I'm alive. Hours passed. They debated who to trust, where to go, and how to release the files without being silenced. Daniel wanted to call in favors from powerful allies. Aaliyah wanted to tell the world directly. Finally, Monica's voice echoed in his memory. They will kill us to keep this buried. Daniel realized there was no safe ally left. No courtroom, no boardroom. Only light, the kind that shatters darkness. And so he made the choice. We record everything. Your voice, my face, the files. We release it on every channel we can. Aaliyah nodded, her small hands steady now. For Miss Monica. As the camera rolled, Daniel spoke of corruption, of hidden systems, of how his wife had uncovered the truth and paid the price. He spoke of children profiled before they could even dream. Then he turned to Aaliyah. She told her story in halting words, but with a courage that pierced through the storm. She told the world what she had seen. When they pressed upload, Daniel whispered, Now we wait. But outside, engines rumbled. Headlights pierced the rain. Black SUVs are pulling up. The house shook with the sound of boots. They had been found. The pounding on the front door was deafening. Boots stomped against the porch. Voices barked orders. Daniel Carter shoved the laptop into Aaliyah's arms. Don't let go of it, no matter what happens. The girl's eyes widened, trembling but determined. Where do I go? Before Daniel could answer, the door exploded inward. Armed men stormed in, rifles raised, faces hidden behind black visors. Red laser dots danced across the walls. Daniel lifted his hands slowly. She's just a child, he growled. The leader sneered. She's a liability. Chaos erupted. Daniel lunged, tackling the nearest man, knocking his weapon to the floor. Aaliyah darted behind the couch, clutching the laptop against her chest. Bullets shattered picture frames, the air thick with smoke and splinters. "Run, Aaliyah!" Daniel shouted. She bolted toward the back door, but two agents cut her off. One grabbed her arm. She screamed, kicking wildly. The laptop slipped from her grip, skidding across the floor. Daniel's heart stopped. He launched himself at them, fists fueled by desperation. He landed a blow hard enough to knock the man sideways. The laptop clattered beneath the piano. Then, a gun cocked. Before the trigger could be pulled, a piercing alarm erupted outside. Sirens, floodlights, voices shouting, "FBI! Drop your weapons!" The black-clad intruders froze. Through the doorway, agents in official jackets stormed in, weapons raised, but not aimed at Daniel. They were aimed at the masked men. Daniel's mind spun. Allies? Or another betrayal? A voice rang out above the chaos. "Monica Carter is in federal custody. The evidence is secured." Daniel's chest clenched. Custody? That could mean anything. Protection. Or silencing. Aaliyah wriggled free, crawling toward the laptop. But one of the masked men spotted her. He lunged. She screamed. Daniel dove across the floor, grabbing the laptop first. He yanked Aaliyah into his arms, shielding her with his body. The man raised his weapon, only to be dropped by a shot from the FBI team. The room fell silent except for Aaliyah's sobs and Daniel's ragged breathing. An agent stepped forward. Helmet off, his face grim. "Mr. Carter, you don't know how dangerous this is. You can't release that drive." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "It's already done." Across the city, Monica Carter was dragged into a sterile interrogation room. Her wrists were zip-tied, her face pale but defiant. A man in a suit leaned over the table. "You think the public cares about your files? We'll bury this before anyone sees a headline." Monica met his eyes steady. "You already lost. They've seen it. They've heard her voice." The man's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the surveillance camera in the corner. His voice dropped. "Then you won't live to see tomorrow." Back at the summer house, Daniel and Aaliyah were herded into black vans, supposedly for their protection. Supposedly safe, but Daniel saw the unease in the agents' faces, the way they avoided his questions. He leaned close to Aaliyah. "Whatever happens, don't stop telling the truth." "Promise me!" She nodded, her small hands clenched into fists. The van turned sharply. Ahead, Daniel saw flashing lights, reporters, cameras, a growing crowd. Word had already spread. The video had gone viral. Screens in shop windows replayed Aaliyah's trembling voice, Daniel's confession, Monica's warnings. The world was watching. The convoy was forced to a stop by protesters blocking the road. Hundreds of people holding signs, chanting, "End vigil! End Black Seed!" Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't alone. However, the celebration was shattered in an instant. Gunfire cracked from the rooftops. The crowd screamed. Agents scrambled, dragging Daniel and Aaliyah to the ground. Daniel's heart lurched. He saw one of the masked men on the roof, rifle aimed directly at the child in his arms. Time slowed. The shot was fired, but the bullet never reached them. An FBI sniper returned fire, striking the masked shooter. The man toppled from the roof. The crowd roared in chaos. Daniel clutched Aaliyah tighter. "Stay with me. Don't let go." They pushed through the mob, agents shielding them as the sound of sirens multiplied. Helicopters thundered overhead. Through the chaos, Daniel caught sight of a woman's silhouette stepping out of another van. Monica. Bruised, restrained, but alive. Their eyes met across the crowd. For one heartbeat, the world shrank to just them. Suddenly, smoke grenades exploded, the air filled with choking gray. Monica's figure blurred, swallowed by the fog. Daniel shouted her name, but his voice was lost in the roar of panic. When the smoke cleared, she was gone. All that remained was her scarf, trampled in the street. The files could no longer be hidden. News stations streamed them live. Politicians stammered denials. Parents demanded answers. Children's names flashed across the nation, exposing decades of secret profiling. And in the center of it all, cameras focused on Daniel Carter and Aaliyah Johnson, symbols of truth and defiance. But for Daniel, victory was hollow. He held Aaliyah close as reporters shouted questions at him. He looked at her and saw both hope and heartbreak. "Where is Monica?" he whispered. No one answered. That night, as the Capitol lights blazed, Monica's absence hung heavy. But her voice lived on in the files, in the video, in Aaliyah's courage. The system had been pierced. Congress announced emergency hearings. The nation demanded justice. Yet in the shadows, Daniel knew the fight wasn't over. Too many powerful men still stood. Too many secrets are still buried. But one truth had been made unbreakable. A child's voice could shake empires. Washington woke to fire. Not the literal kind, but a blaze of outrage, of headlines, of voices rising all at once. Every television, every phone screen, every newspaper banner screamed the exact words, "Project Black Seed exposed." Parents clutched their children tighter. Communities that had lived for decades under quiet suspicion finally had proof of the system's design against them. Congressional hearings were called within hours. Senators pounded fists on podiums promising accountability. Cabinet officials ducked behind lawyers. Agents burned papers in secret basements, scrambling to erase trails too deep to bury. The world had changed overnight. Daniel Carter sat in a cramped witness room, fluorescent lights buzzing above. His face looked hollow, aged far beyond his years. Aaliyah sat beside him, feet barely touching the floor, her hands wrapped tightly around his. The door opened. A clerk leaned in. "They're ready for you." Daniel rose, but Aaliyah tugged his sleeve. Her small voice trembled. "Do I have to talk?" He knelt so his eyes met hers. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to. You already did more than anyone could ever ask," she swallowed hard. "But if I don't, people might not believe." Daniel's chest ached. He brushed a tear from her cheek. "Then I'll be with you the whole time." Together they walked into the chamber. The hearing room was a storm of flashing cameras and restless whispers. Reporters scribbled notes. Senators leaned forward, eyes sharpened. On the screens behind them, words in bold letters: Vigil, Project Black Seed. Daniel spoke first. He told the truth plainly, about the recruitment, the pressure, the raids. About the day he saw Aaliyah's face in a file and realized the system was not about protection, but control. Then it was Aaliyah's turn. Her small voice quivered at first, but the silence of the room gave her strength. They came to my school," she said. "They told my teacher I was dangerous. I'm not dangerous. I just wanted to draw, to play, to be a kid." Her words hung in the air like a verdict no jury could overturn. Outside, the movement grew. Protesters filled streets across the country, holding signs with children's faces, chanting for Monica Carter's name. She had vanished into smoke and chaos, but she had become a legend, a symbol of the truth she'd fought to release. Murals bloomed overnight. On walls in Harlem, in Oakland, in Chicago, artists painted Monica's profile surrounded by sunbursts. Her name in bold. She spoke. We heard. Though she was gone, she was everywhere. For Daniel, freedom was bittersweet. He was no longer hunted, but he was not whole. Nights were haunted by gunfire echoes, by Monica's scarf crushed into asphalt. Aaliyah became his anchor. She refused to let despair swallow him. When nightmares pulled him under, she would tap his arm, whispering, "We're still here." That means she's still here, too. And maybe she was right. Months later, on the steps of the Capitol, Daniel stood with Aaliyah at a rally. Thousands of people stretched across the lawn, holding candles. News drones hovered in the sky. Aaliyah stepped up to the microphone. Her voice carried on speakers across the city. "My name is Aaliyah Johnson. I was 9 when they said I was a threat. But I'm not. I'm just a girl. And so are all the others. We are not your numbers. We are not your experiments. We are your future." The crowd erupted, a sea of voices shouting her name. Daniel looked up at the sky, at the soft shimmer of stars breaking through the city haze. For the first time in years, he let himself hope. Later that night, as the rally dispersed, Aaliyah slipped her hand into Daniel's. "Do you think Monica's watching?" Daniel smiled faintly, though his throat tightened. "If she is, I think she's proud." They walked down the steps together into the glow of streetlights, into the noise of a world still burning, but now burning toward change. The war wasn't won. Not yet, but the silence was broken. And sometimes, that was enough to start a revolution. Every story leaves behind an echo. For Daniel, Aaliyah, and Monica, that echo was not silence. It was a voice carried forward, demanding to be heard. What began as a trembling midnight phone call became a movement that challenged the foundations of power. One frightened child, one haunted man, and one relentless woman uncovered a system designed to strip away dignity under the false promise of safety. They revealed how data could be weaponized, how fear could be coded into algorithms, and how invisible chains could shackle entire communities. But their story is more than conspiracy, corruption, and loss. At its heart, it is about courage. Courage born not from strength, but from love. Monica risked everything not because she sought glory, but because she refused to let injustice swallow the future of children like Aaliyah. Daniel chose to fight not because he was forced to, but because he rediscovered what it meant to care, to protect, to stand for something greater than himself. And Aaliyah, innocent, small, but unshakable, proved that even the youngest voice could shake the tallest walls. Their journey reminds us that resistance often begins in the most unexpected places. A hidden USB drive, a courtroom testimony, a candlelit rally, or a child's whispered words of truth. Systems of oppression are vast, but they are not invincible. When truth finds its way into the light, even the most carefully built lies begin to crumble. And though Monica's fate remains uncertain, her legacy endures. In every mural painted, in every chant raised, in every reform demanded, her spirit lives on. She became what the system could not silence, a symbol. The moral is simple yet unyielding. Justice does not wait for permission. It is claimed that ordinary people refuse to bow to fear. In the end, one frightened girl's call became the turning point of a nation. It teaches us that no voice is too small, no truth too fragile, no fight too hopeless. Change begins the moment we decide that silence is no longer an option. And if a 6-year-old girl can find the strength to speak, then we can.